glowing brain, teeming with yellow-green lume, pulsing like a heart. My heart and mind are one, it said, and they are set upon you. I felt myself falling and flailing in space, the infinite void in which I found myself trapped. Libra, for the love of God, why do you torment me? Let me go, if you wish. I'll release you, but not before you know my reasons. The reasons you serve? I wouldn't say his name. The eternal stranger? Yes, I want you to understand us. Then you will understand yourself. No, I know who I am, and I'll never yield. I won't give in. I'll stay faithful. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. The pulse grew louder as the lume swarmed. You'll find yourself with no answers, no options, and no means of escape. My second and third books will give you all three. And all you need to do is read and learn. I'll do no such thing. I'll pace my cell. I'll sleep until I hang, Miss Wright. You'd sacrifice yourself for me, even though you now beg for your freedom? She had me there. Aye, I would. And may the Christian devil take me for it. Silence. Her hideous cerebral heartbeat kept time in the midst of eternity. Of course, of your life has come down to three choices. You've made two of them already, but the third shall soon be posed, not by me, but by God. By my God. We believe that either nothing we do matters or everything we do matters. The truth lies in the middle. In the support stand on the scales, I'll show you what your choices were, and how you came to make them. You think you know, but as I once did, you only see through a looking glass darkly. Otep has made everything clear to me, and Alice in Wonderland. I asked her an odd question. What's stage 5? Correlation. Even though I didn't understand, I screamed. This scream woke me. I heard not the battle cry of a warrior, but the wail of a feeble old man. At this point, maybe I was. Prison ages a person. Maybe what genius first believed solitary confinement to be good for convicts. Am I going mad at last? No one answered. No one would. Dinner came. I chose to eat. Nature called. I chose to heed it. Decision by decision, whether trivial or not, I would work my way out of this dilemma, as Theseus had worked his way out of the labyrinth. I couldn't help but think of the woman who had used Ariadne's thread. Would she never let me be? The key would be strict discipline. Exercising in my cell, even pacing, praying and pondering scriptures, most of all write my confession. That would keep me from reading Libra's books. I remained blissfully busy until night's out. So far, so good. Day 3, Friday, November 13th, 1885. I couldn't sleep. I lay on my cot, not counting sheep but numbers, 1 to 100 and back. When that didn't work, I repeated, For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. What greater assurance could a man have than that of eternal salvation? Despite my crime, I still believed in Christ. Faith had been born and bred into me right from the cradle. Though it stopped growing around this time, I set off for America. To this day, I don't know why. For God so loved the world, I whispered in the darkness. That means us, the world in general, not any single person in particular. Like lightning, it hit me. God's love was collective. No matter how many times I've been taught the opposite. On how many occasions had Jesus addressed ye instead of thou in the Bible? Go ye into all the world. I quoted preaching the gospel, but to the frosty night far more chilling. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. If Jesus said this, what mercy would he actually give sinners? The implication was obvious. Yes, one could be saved, but if one fell from grace, one was, as salt has lost its savor, a dead vine to burn in everlasting flame. In my tired mind the words yes, but ticked to and fro like a clock's pendulum. They lulled me to sleep. In the morning I couldn't remember having any dreams. Metronomes are awesome, by the way. Strange, I said. Then used the chamber pot and did stretches. At the asylum we doctors held physical exercise in the highest regard, coupled with manual labor, which many patients performed, but others were unfit for. Exercise was the shortest path to health. Thus I jumped like Jack, touched my toes, rolled my head to limber up my soft neck, marched in, ran in place. I was glad to let my muscles think for once. When old Jake entered my cell with breakfast, I yelped in alarm. What's the opposite of a creepypasta? Huh. Sorry, time for grub. And time to empty that. He gestured to the pot I used when grub was no longer useful. Step lively, I found that task a relief. When I finished emptying and scrubbing the receptacle, I washed my hands and returned to my cell. You get bacon and eggs again, but I brought you the best of the lot. Thank you, sir, I said, unexpectedly moved. To what do I owe the pleasure? You don't owe me nothing. Most folks in this place are rotten. You're not. Haven't you heard what I've done? Killed your boss because you hated him. That's not new. As if I kept in check an internal judge, he added, Can't pardon you, but I understand. You might want to keep your eyes peeled around noontime. Why? You'll see. With that, he bolted the door and left me to enjoy my meal. Bit by bit, the food was getting better. I felt like a hog being fattened. Perhaps I was. The process is completely humane. Shaking my head to clear it, I laid my dishes aside and sat at the writing table. I wanted to be a regular physician, not a psychiatrist. I'd been a fragile child, not sickly, but brittle boned. Compared to my brothers and sister, I was the run of the litter. They'd tease me without remorse, throwing me around like a ball when I was very young. One day I vowed I'd become a doctor so no more children like me would be born. I found relief from the torment of my siblings and the schoolyard. Whenever Uncle Hans came to visit, a literary critic with an agile body and the wit to match, he understood me as no one else in my family did, except father once Hans died. Hans and I had delightful discussions. Some of my favorite topics were the authors he'd read and review, including Friedrich Engels, Hermann Hesse, Franz Mesmer, and of course Marx. Hans was no Marxist, but a scholar of economics and philosophy. When I was younger, I believed Hans to be nearly omniscient, next to God. With a patient indulging in a chuckle, Uncle told me he was no such thing. He certainly tried, he said. Was all that trying the cause of his deterioration, beginning at the age of 40? I'm aware that as we grow older, we lose our faculties, yet father and mother were spared the ravages Hans had to suffer, and they lived to be twice his age. When father met our Maker, he was 82, mother 83, God rest them. As for poor uncle, at 50, he had to be committed to an asylum in Stuttgart. What preceded this? Amnesia. First, he couldn't remember the publication dates of recent books he reviewed. You sure it just wasn't Alzheimer's? I mean, seriously, it's kind of depressing. Soon he couldn't recall what he had said in the most recent articles. Names slipped through his mind like sand slips through one's fingers. Places eluded him. He was always here. At the end, the slippage extended to time. He had no past or future, just the present. No longer Uncle Hans was so easily perturbed as I grew up, and he regressed. When no one else was around, he would cry. I'd lend him my shoulder. That just sounds like someone with poor memory and really bad depression. Martin, he'd say, one of the few family members he didn't slur. I don't understand what's happening to me. Do you? I always had to tell him no, feeling guilty and ashamed for us both. After Uncle was committed, because apparently being sad and forgetting things is reason to be committed to an asylum. After Uncle was committed, I swore to Father that I'd still be a doctor, but one that healed minds instead of bodies. One that might cure people like Hans one day. He died before his time. I failed him. Why had I even gone to America in the first place, knowing the risks, groundbreaking and experimental developments in the field of psychiatrist? Tree. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help me God. Silence. Spent from my efforts, I lay down on the cot, burying myself in the thin blankets. The prison could afford to spare me. The breeze streaming in through the window would make anyone die of hypothermia before they met the hangman. My second dose of fitful sleep came. So did an unwelcome vision. Uncle Hans sitting on his cot on the Stuttgart sanitarium, wearing no straitjacket, but constrained all the same. His head turned toward me, his eyes staring through me at the wall, as if I were a ghost. "You couldn't save me." "No one could. I was beyond saving, as is your woman, though she's nowhere near insane, yet they—" Yes, I knelt and grasped Hans's hand. "Who are they? Insects without wings, without souls? That's what we are to the outer gods." I jolted awake. The echo of footsteps, voices from the gallows yard, made me kneel on my cot and stare through the window bars, marching feet and the crunch of frozen earth. Someone was preparing to meet God, or more likely the devil. Several guards paraded in an inflexible line toward the middle of the yard, where its infamous apparatus stood. They escorted a prisoner dressed in rags, his wrists shackled, his head bowed. I sensed something was very wrong. The warden stood waiting near the scaffold. He raised his voice for all to hear. I presumed I wasn't the sole one watching from the cold comfort of my cell. He gestured to unfold a sheet of paper. Or so I thought. My vantage point afforded me a good view, but not a close and personal one. "Rodney Everett Frost, you have been convicted by a judge and jury of the capital crime of murder. The penalty for such is death by hanging. There have been no stays or reprieves, therefore the execution will proceed as stipulated under the laws of the state of Massachusetts. Any last words?" Whatever the condemned did or didn't say was lost to the biting wind. "May God have mercy on your soul," said the warden, then gave a signal. The guards took hold both of the arms and condemned dragged him up the stairs to the hanging platform. Frost struggled as hard as he could, but the two burly veterans who'd make sure his neck would break also had to make sure he'd reach the rope. Reach it he did, and when he saw its loop he wailed aloud. I'd only heard such terror from one other prisoner, the inmate in the OR. In addition to the iron clamps on his wrists, the guards fastened leather restraints around Frost's torso and feet, like the ones used for unruly asylum residents. After letting him howl for 10 more seconds, they took a burlap sack and pulled it over his head, fastening it with the noose. More like wailing. As far away as I was, I could still watch the burlap inflate and deflate as he tried to gulp his last breath. Then the drop. No resounding crack. I heard nothing. Oh, Lord, I heard nothing. The ragged bundle, no longer recognizable as Rodney Everett Frost, thrashed in the throes of convulsions. On and on he writhed like a worm on a hook. The guards did nothing but stare at the ground as the condemned man stayed alive, clinging to whatever air had been choked out of him by the noose. He's still seizing. They botched the execution. How long will it take him to die? I couldn't stand there to watch. Yet I couldn't turn my head away. Nor could I ignore the whiff of human waste in the air as the prisoner lost control of his bowels and bladder. For over an hour I stayed still, ignoring the agony in my back and knees. When the show was over, several officials shook their heads. I made the sign of the Lutheran cross 3 times over my heart to pray for Frost's soul. To my disgust, 1 or 2 guards spat on the ground below the corpse. "Judge not, lest ye be judged," I said to myself. After that I lay back down, crawled under the blankets, and curled into a fetal position. I hoped for pneumonia or bronchitis at the least, to weaken and distract me from my upcoming fate. How long before I died? 1 hour or 2? Old Jake had to rouse me from another fit of slumber when dinner time came. "Wakey, wakey, doctor," he said gently. "Got mutton and cabbage tonight." Half cognizant, I stammered. What'd he do?" "Rodney Frost, you mean? Strangled his wife in a drunken rage, then threw his wee son down the well because he thought the baby wasn't his. The scoundrel got what he deserved, if you ask me. Took him long enough to die, but so what? He didn't think of that when he drowned his boy. Not yet 6 months old. A shame." I turned away from the turnkey. "Don't feed me anymore. Let me starve." "Why?" "So you go to your hanging a scarecrow? Not on my watch. Listen." He leaned in close, and I could smell his putrid breath. "You're all right, Vollinger. As I said, I know what it's like to hate somebody enough to kill him. Now, Frost, he and his kin have been around a while. In terms of stealing and brawls and bars, nothing but trouble. I think they did it on purpose. Made his drop too short." Speaking of drop, my stomach did. I wanted no dinner at all. Didn't mean to scare you. I'll make sure you're weighed and measured right. The warden's heard of you, at least a little bit. He has nothing against you except for your murdering. He's held a grudge against the whole Frost family for ages now. When he lay his hand on my arm, I jerked but didn't pull back. Stay with me, he said. You're the closest I have to a friend on this block. That's depressing. Old Jake stood, went toward the door, glanced at my plate and mug, and then left. Fact, I have 4 more days to live. Fact, I'll be executed by the same method as Rodney Everett Frost. Fact, a short drop hanging, as opposed to a measured drop, takes over an hour. Conclusion, why should I eat? I don't like mutton and cabbage anyway. I let my plate cool, but drank the mug of water. No sense in being dehydrated. Day 4. Didn't eat anything last night, did you? Old Jake clicked his tongue and shook his head. Shame. You let good food get cold. The guard placed my new plate and mug on the table and removed my old ones. First things first. Time for slopping out. Once my chamber pot was clean, my hands washed, I sat to wolf down breakfast. I feel like you should eat before you clean the, unclean stuff. You don't exactly have, antibiotics. The jailer watched me devour my bacon in 2 bites. Good. Starving's not the way to go, even on death row. By the way, how are the books? What books? I asked, and then gave a star. Oh, those books. Holy tedious. Boring, eh? Thought they'd be. Sorry about that. Don't be. You're not the author. Just the messenger. I won't shoot you. We had a good chuckle. See? We got him to laugh. Humor was in short supply here. Well, Doctor, have fun trying to read them anyhow. With a waiter's bow, he took my dirty dishes away and departed. I won't read them. Neither the second or the third, however. After doing it, more exercise and getting a terrible cramp in my side. What else could I do? I was too alert to go back to sleep. I didn't need a constitutional. I wasn't in the mood to continue my confession, other than stare out the window at the empty death yard beyond. My only activity was to keep reading. Wearily I sighed. If I were going to eat the forbidden fruit, I'd take a large juicy bite. Merits of identification versus alienation. As if the first book hid in the text between lines, legible only by monocle. Meridians in our world and other worlds. The world meridian is defined as a circle of constant longitude, passing through a given place on the Earth's surface and terrestrial poles. This applies to our prime meridian, which runs through Greenwich, England, and other planets' worlds also have meridians. We simply haven't defined them. Yet another meaning is the hour of midday noon. I mean, that's kind of what AM and PM are about. It's about where the meridian is in relation to the sun. I think it's anti-meridian and post-meridian. The book concerns itself with a third metaphorical sense of the word meridian, which is a high point, or a zenith, as in the meridian of one's life. It applies the time as well as space to events and situation. If words have meridians in terms of longitude, they also have terms of longevity and evolution. Our word in the meridian of its time is high point prosperity. The sun does not stay at zenith for long. Greece waned, then fell, as did Rome. Why should we expect immortality? For millennia we have sought and failed to find it. We'll keep doing so forever. Prophets and preachers have promised life after death, but who among us has come back from the celestial or infernal realm to speak of it? Like the proverbial carrot on the end of the stick, such a promise remains beyond reach, at least while we still inhabit our mortal bodies. We mules keep trudging along, longing for a great reward at the end of our days. We believe and believe, but we don't receive. Hope springs eternal in the meridian. We may achieve what we hope for. The mechanics of metaphysics and meridians. Have you ever wished upon a star? As a child I did so every night. Nanny called me superstitious, mother called me irreligious, father smiled. There always lay a twinkle in his eye. The truth of meridians is that while we find ourselves in them, we reach, not just wish. We see the prize within our grasp as a racehorse sees the finish line and sprint toward it. We make plans and strategize and coordinate, then take action while we're still ascending. As a whole and individual beings, as well did Wells struggle to survive. We had no time to cultivate our inner selves, because our outer selves needed food and shelter. We still do, yet we obtain far more easily than our prehistoric ancestors did. We don't need to fear woolly mammoths anymore. We develop what we call technology to take care of our physical needs. In Earth's meridian, we found the ambition and the energy to take dominion over it at last. We have certainly fulfilled God's commandment to replenish the earth. Here lies the paradox. As we fill the world, we are also emptying it. Why? We know from physics that energy is used and eventually spent. Earth is finite. So are the other planets in our solar system and beyond. They are physical. Meridians are metaphysical. Yet the principle is the same. And in time we will use up the energy of this current precious state and then begin to fade. We'll either get what we want while the iron is hot, or fail while it turns cold. This is the law of nature. Does it apply equally across all worlds? No. Where the outer gods live, the meridian is only line, the only state in which they find themselves. Even Cthulhu, dead and dreaming in his undersea of Riley, will one day rise, and on that day death shall die. Resurrection is possible. Immortality, as the outer gods know it, is possible. Is it any wonder the world considers people like Father and me insane? We know these truths to be self-evident, as others know the truths in Declaration of Independence to be self-evident. Father and I would add eternal to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We've discovered the means to these ends, and the mechanisms behind it. We know our time is short. We must strike now. My meridian and yours. As of this writing, I am 33. I'll reach my own meridian in 6 years. If I do not fulfill my goal by the end of my 39th year, I shall be lost. So the crawling chaos has ordained. As for you, O spirit peering into mine, do you have a favorite number between 1 and 10? This is the prime factor of your days. Your meridian will come when you reach a middle age. That is, its multiple of either 3 or 5. My favorite number? 13? Laugh if you must. But I wanted it to be lucky instead of unlucky. I got my wish. By his will, at the age of 13, I entered into a pact with Otep at my first meridial stage. I'll elaborate on these stages later. For now, what is my meridian? 13 times 3, or 39. A middle age, at least as we count our years. To find your meridian, take your favorite number and multiply it by 3 or 5. You or yourself can discover a factor is more suitable. For example, if you like the number 9 and consider it your favorite, then 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 3 is 27. A lucky number, but it may not be your meridian. If you prefer the number 10, then 30 or 50 is meridian age. Approaching your meridian. To live is to suffer. No one has ever said our days were easy, even in childhood. I have good news and bad news. While approaching your meridian, life becomes far more challenging. Imagine an uphill climb that becomes vertical. No one except the most experienced climbers will be able to ascend it. Yet by the time you reach your meridian age, experience will have taught you what you need to know. If you have heeded its lessons. If not, you'll plummet blindly off the cliff. I know this firsthand. When approaching your meridian, you'll feel apprehension. Life itself may feel wrong to you, full of fears you can't define. Take heart. This is the first sign, your life's highest point. Self-doubt. You may begin to doubt your life's worth and your choices thus far, and perhaps your own sanity. If you feel you're going crazy, remember that what you call reality will change for the better, no matter the pain or turmoil. Finally, despair. You may feel your life has no purpose. Why go on? You ask yourself. I've struggled and fought, but for nothing. Hold fast, hold fast. The reason despair sets in is because there are those in this universe who want you to remain asleep, to forget your full potential in your dreams, to be like them. If you believe I only speak of people, you are wrong. Never forsake your own spirit. Doctor? Old Jake grabbed the collar of my ragged shirt and yanked it up. Oh, he had an exclamation point there. was like, "Doctor!" Like, but why? My head had literally been sunk into the pages of... Oh, he thought I was dead. Okay, I was like really confused. Like, is something happening? I must have fallen asleep while reading. Dead? I asked, shivering. No, but I've caught hypothermia in this cell. He clicked his tongue. I'll get you extra blankets. I'll also try to move your bed away from the window so you don't. I understand. You're a dead man already, but that doesn't mean you deserve to pass away like this. On a few occasions we will admit, and several more that we won't. It has happened. Well, I mean, it's nice that you actually have empathy and you care about people. You're a nice person, Jake. Thank you. Such knowledge froze me even more than the temperature of the prison. I'll be right back, said Jake. I'd put that book away if I were you. Truer words were never spoken, but that didn't mean I'd heed them. Once my jailer was gone, I sat up, shut the tome, and took stock of my current situation. I now have an idea what Libra had been talking about, if a vague one. My pact with Otep and its 5 meridial stages. In the process of becoming Otep is, and always will be, there are 5 stages, each bringing a power beyond our senses. Once the 3rd and 4th stages are reached, 2 powers are bestowed before the final one. Stage 1, Initiation, knowledge of the present. Perfect. The power given is perfect intuition. Stage 2, Education, knowledge of the past. Perfect memory. Stage 3, Illumination, knowledge of the future. Divination and telepathy. Stage 4, Deconstruction and reconstruction. Renewal of the mind. Powers, perfect mental fortitude, which one will certainly need for the final stage. Stage 5, Correlation. Connection of the mind and body to everything is. Omniscience and immortality. These are the marvels, or at least possibilities, at which sane people scoff. They should. Who among us has a perfect memory, or knows the future? We say maturity is abandoning fantasy and living in the real world. Yet all the supernatural abilities that we say man cannot have, God has. We say God is omniscient, but how can he be so, without flaws, recall it and intuition? How can he know our every thought without being able to read minds? How can he guide us to the future and teach us the lessons of the past, unless he can freely travel through both? In short, God is perfect via his perfect knowledge. We bend our knees and bow our heads, denying such knowledge for ourselves. Must we do so forever? Must we wait until after death to achieve glory? The world's God, Jehovah, says yes. If he finds us unworthy, finds us worthy at Judgment Day. On the other hand, Otep says yes in this life, by our meridian age. In this time of writing, I'm in the beginning of Stage 3, Illumination. Stage 1, Initiation. When I say initiation is the perfect knowledge of the present, I don't mean rattling off current events, word for word as if from a newspaper. I can certainly do that, and could from the age of 16 onward. What took me 3 years. Otep's tutelage takes other decades, and the usefulness of this pursuit wanes with each passing day. Why recite the news when one can experience it? Perfect knowledge of the present means fully understanding current events and how they relate to one's life and the lives of others. One of the least favorite words is trivial. To me, nothing is. We dismiss all sorts of things we do, little tasks that keep us going, without knowing why. We may not make the front page of the Times Post, but what we do is news because it's new. When we know what we're going to do in the here and now, not only in the practical but spiritual sense, we take the first step on the road to godhood, and don't realize it. We're part of time, even if we believe ourselves insignificant within time. As an example, I recently read about a soldier wounded in the Civil War who had to be committed because of his mental state. His name? Cepheus Ventnor. One of my first cousins. I'd always wondered what had become of him. And there it was, in a column, our very own Sanctum Chronicle. The article said that he babbled about more war, greater wars to come. 2 that would involve the whole world. Well, I mean, if he only spoke of 2, that must mean it ends at World War II, right? 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 The author, sane and well-meaning, didn't believe cousin Cepheus, but I do. I believe in our connection to one another, via family and also via history. Stage 2, education. Whenever I hear the word education, I groan. It brings to mind the smell of chalk and its screech on the blackboard, the outpouring of facts like a waterfall, the bleeding of pens upon paper with failing marks, the thrashing of schoolboys who speak out and schoolgirls who speak at all whenever they're not spoken to. I never wanted to be a teacher. Yet there's another sense of education that makes my heart sing instead of sink. It means to bring up, to nourish, to train or mold. But children aren't potted plants or potter's clay, as the Bible says. Prefer to think it as to lead someone out of darkness of ignorance into the light of knowledge. That's what school's supposed to do. But in my experience, it turns one into clay or a seed that grows. As paradoxical as it is, I hated school and all its miseries, but loved learning. Why this stage in my deification process? Why my insistence upon... And we got logged out of the website. I don't know why Creepypasta keeps doing that, but okay. Bye.